Today we take the opportunity to recognize outstanding colleagues who have been chosen by the Brite Divinity School Alumni Council to be honored as the 2012 Distinguished Ministers Award recipients. The Distinguished Ministers Award for Pastoral Ministry is presented to an alumnus of Brite who has rendered outstanding and continuous service in pastoral ministry with long tenure in the local congregation. I invite the Reverend Dr. Timothy Diebel to make his way to the stage, and while he's coming forward, I want to recognize Reverend Don Wilson, who is here as the Senior Minister at First Christian Church of Abilene, along with a group of his church members who are here to recognize and honor today's award recipient. Would members of that congregation please stand and be recognized?
On a cool September morning, positioned in a garden between smiling guests and an evergreen tree, my dad was officiating at my wedding. All had gone pretty well on this sun-drenched day. The scriptures had been read, the vows and the rings successfully exchanged, and as far as my new bride could discern, there was just one thing remaining. She was concerned, however, that Daddy had somehow lost his place in the order of things. "Isn't it time for the kiss?" she whispered. To which Daddy calmly and with more patience than the new bride and groom replied, "No." First we're going to pray. And that, I would suggest, pretty well sums up the core of what one needs to know about Chris Diebel. The faith that he's lived, the ministry to which he's been devoted these past many decades. Patience, kindness, deep and profound wisdom. And before any other action that may seem compelling, first we pray. Meal times, worship times, major decision times, and yes, wedding times. First, at all times, we're going to pray. It began in an early age. My dad grew up in the rural South Texas town of Berkeley, the son of a cowboy turned merchant and a Campbellite mother. Now, unquestionably, they raised him in the church and in a faithful home, but his real conversion occurred as a teenager one afternoon after agreeing to drive the 5 elderly sisters who lived next door to see a portion of their ranch some distance away. And deep into their vast acreage. And despite his protestations as to the advisability of such a course, they prevailed upon him to drive across a riverbed into which they got hopelessly stuck up to the axles, miles away from anywhere. With few other options available, Daddy crawled out the car window and started walking back somewhere to get some help. He hadn't gone very far when, miraculously, there came a fence rider on horseback who not only pulled him up and gave him a lift on the back of the saddle back to the car, he also helped him free the automobile from its mud. And that day, Daddy says with a grin, I knew there had to be a God who answered prayer. Serving in a generation when clergy were more concerned about being examples than professionals, political quotations. Daddy somehow managed to embody both. I think that if Marcus Welby had been a pastor instead of a physician, he would have looked a lot like my dad. Throughout his ministry, he took seriously the significance not only of what he said, but how he lived. The fact that my parents' coattails carry with them enduring and affectionate relationships with members of every one of the congregations that they served, including the many interim assignments he accepted in his retirement, offers some suggestion that people in those settings appreciated not simply what they heard, but what they saw. Retired now for a few years. He is for me the center of enduring pride, deep appreciation, pastoral example, and one profound regret. All those years growing up among the pews toward which he preached, I wish looking back that I'd paid more attention. But I was the gross exception. While I was just out there hearing the sound of my dad, countless others were paying close enough attention to hear through him the very voice of God. Well, I couldn't be prouder of this year's recipient of Brite's Distinguished Minister's Award for Pastoral Ministry, Reverend Dr. Chris Diebel.
Gotta get all these pictures made around here. Thank you so much for the award. It humbles me, seriously. But I have to say that I'm very indebted to a lot of people that has made this possible. 60 years ago, I was serving a student church in Brite, Texas. I met a young lady from Las Cruces by the name of Brite, and we married. And Brite has been a very constant companion by my side. I'm indebted to her. Met a great host of friends here from Abilene. My two boys grew up in First Christian Church, Abilene. They grew up as leaders of their youth groups, not only in the church in Abilene, but also in the central area Christian churches and in the region of Christian churches, the Southwest region. I'm indebted to my family, and I, on their behalf, accept this honor. Also, I'm indebted to the Brite Divinity School. I didn't graduate from Brite Divinity School. I graduated from Brite College of the Bible. I know that makes we met in the old Brite building, which is now what, the Bailey building? And it was a grand time. But we didn't have that kind of staff that y'all have now. I shan't forget that when I was ordained in the Central Christian Church in Austin. John Barkley was the preacher there, and the ordination service consisted of calling me from the pew. I knelt on a step at the chancel area. My brother was an elder in that church, and they called up 2 or 3 elders and a couple of deacons and an old retired minister, and they laid their hands on my head, and John had a prayer. I got up and he said, "Go to work." That was the extent of my ordination. I still don't know whether I'm legal or not. I never did get an ordination certificate. So I'm indebted to the seminary. Thank you. And I'm also, go ahead. I'm also indebted to a lot of great people in 5 congregations that I served. I mentioned the Brite Church. I was the first minister of that Brite Church. And when I went there, we had a group of about 25, and they didn't know what they were supposed to do, and I certainly didn't know what I was supposed to do, and we got along marvelous. I've been in West Texas for a little over 50 years, and I think every time I go through the town of Stanton, the town between Midland and Big Springs, there's a sign introducing the town there. It says, "Welcome to Stanton, the city of 4,000 friendly people and a few old sore heads." I think, you know, that pretty well sums up my ministry. I had the privilege of serving some of the finest people in the world. They refused to let me fall. And every one of those congregations had a few old sore heads that refused to let me relax. And I'm indebted to both of them. It's an honor to be here. And for this recognition, I love you, and I thank you.
I need to sit there.